So when I was a kid, and I'm interested if this was true for you, wherever you grew up, when I was a kid, whenever anyone stood up to a bully, after they pushed somebody or took something from another kid or whatever, the bully would act outraged, and say, "What? It's a free country." And this wasn't just one kid who would do this. It was a go-to line, at least where I went to school. "What? It's a free country." So, I mean, did kids say this when? No? Yes? Okay, you heard. Okay, because my dad, I grew up in Wisconsin. My dad grew up in Minnesota, and he told me that bullies in his time said this. So it's at least, I know it's at least an upper Midwest thing that got passed down to at least 2 generations. But so I'd be interested if kind of the childhood folkways of America, there's some kind of go-to lines. And I don't know if they do have bully conventions somewhere where they swap tools of the trade. I don't know. "What? It's a free country." I can push you around if I want to. I can take something from you if I want to. Don't oppress my God-given freedom by telling me that I can't. It's a free country. So now, of course, this doesn't honor the freedom of others to do to them what they're doing to others. It's a free country for the bully, but not for their victims. But far be it from them, for them to see past their padlocked brain box on that respect. The problem is that some people never grow past this kind of stunted schoolyard ethical philosophy, if you can call it that. But just because they don't doesn't mean that we shouldn't. And if we have been, in fact, the one who has behaved in this way, God can give us the grace to grow towards a truer freedom that takes responsibility for our actions and does unto others as we would like to have them do unto us. So the Apostle Paul, as we heard in a very compelling way, has this teaching about the freedom that God calls us to. We can use that freedom in a way that undercuts that very freedom. When we exercise our freedom in self-centered ways, it gets us ensnared in conflicts and addictions and cycles of suffering of all kinds. A stinking accumulation of mental and emotional garbage. Right? And a truer freedom is the freedom that we find through the grace of Christ. That one is one that actually frees us from what we most need freeing from. And the key is love. The key is a love beyond bounds. And then Paul goes on to name some virtues that are in fact expressions of this kind of freedom, this kind of love that frees us from the self, a very, very restricted self. And these are the fruits of the Holy Spirit that can move us beyond the confines of our own self-centeredness. Affection for others, he names. Exuberance about life, he names. Serenity. A willingness to stick with things. Diligence. A sense of compassion in the heart. A conviction that a basic holiness permeates things and people. How freeing is that? Loyal commitments, not needing to force our way in life, able to marshal and direct our energies wisely. So this Sunday, like last Sunday, for those of you who are here, we're going to explore some of these virtues together. And these virtues, you see it on an insert in your bulletin. These are from an organization called the Virtues Project. which has identified and defined dozens of virtues shared by religions and wisdom traditions the world over. And this was first shared with me by a colleague who I was in a Bible study with, who's Baha'i, who really, and Baha'ism really embraces the ways that the world's religions are one in the essence. So we've already shared what I think is a helpful definition of virtue from a Benedictine book called The Power to Realize the Good. Virtue is power, and these are different kinds of superpowers, I guess, different forms of these powers to realize the good. And some of them we're inclined to do well at. Some of them we're inclined to be challenged by. And I think it's important, to stick with Paul's teachings here, that really sees virtues as a truer kind of freedom, of aspirations or inspirations to a truer kind of freedom. And I think all of this is really important to name because, as I shared last week, we seem to be living in a particularly cynical age where truth and goodness are thrown out or are used in a cynical way that's just self-serving. And I think it's no mistake that there's a lot of conflict and rising tension and dehumanization in our country and in our world. And then on top of that, we will soon be able to exercise our freedom and responsibility as citizens of a democracy. And so it's an important time. It's always an important time, but I think this is a particularly important time to be clear about the virtues that our faith calls us to remind ourselves of them, to root ourselves in them, so that we can strive to represent and aspire to these virtues of a deep faith, and to hold each other accountable to them as well. All, in a spirit of grace. As Juliana well said, we're not going to live up to this. But that doesn't mean that we throw them out. It means that we're accountable to them, and we receive God's grace, and know that we need that grace, and can let that love and that grace free us to an ever kind of deeper freedom that these virtues are an expressions of. And so I'm gonna spread them out to you, and maybe the Spirit will be at work. There's some randomness here. I'm going to give them out randomly, and maybe the Spirit will be at work, and it'll be interesting to see what you receive. Each virtue card has the virtue, and then has I think a helpful explanation of that, and then a quote, and then a way of helping us, kind of a guide to practicing this or reminding ourselves of that virtue in a daily sort of way. And so maybe you'll receive one that you need to have affirmed in yourself. Maybe you'll receive one that will be a challenge to you. Maybe you'll receive one that you may feel called to advocate for, or received one that makes you feel grumpy. It'll be, it's always good to notice what pisses us off. All right, so I'm going to hand. I'm talking too much. All right, random. Okay, that's truly random now. All right. Oh, thanks. God bless you. I think two more. Take one and pass it on, kind of thing. But don't look. Well, don't look at what you're passing on, so that you're not choosing what's just going to be. All right, is that enough? Oh, thank you, Cheryl. God bless you. All right. Okay, good. All right, and then, give yourself some time to read through it, and then I am going to, boy, this one is dark, that's good. And then I will then invite us to share, if you've got one that really struck you or that you want to lift up. Thank you. Give that to Juliana. Oh, yeah, good, excuse me. All right. And then if you're joining us online, the website is virtuesproject.com. There isn't a random virtue generator, though. That would be kind of cool. And this is something that artificial intelligence can't help us with. All right, so you all got one? All right, so I'd be really interested to hear from you all. If you received one that you felt like affirmed what you need to have affirmed, or challenged something, or that you feel like you feel called to advocate for. All right.
Well, I got one that says decisiveness, and that is probably one of the hardest things for me, because I'm often content to just sort of let things float along and not make any changes. And once you decide something, you have to make up your mind, and just things will change. And it's really hard to live with change sometimes. But that's what life is, and sometimes life can be enriched a lot by making a decision. So I pray about that a lot.
Nice.
And that's
wow.
what
So
I
you.
have to say about that. It's difficult.
Wow. And what are on the back? On the back.
Oh, yes.
Do you want to share what the practice?
Sure.
Of decisiveness?
The practice of decisiveness, I have the courage to decide. I have confidence in my choices. I'm not afraid to act in the moment. I take the time I need to discern the wisest path. I trust my deepest truth. I carry my decisions into action. And there's a quote from Helen Keller that says, life is either a daring adventure or nothing. So.
Good, thank you. Anyone else receive something that spoke to you or that challenges you?
When I first got mine, it said cleanliness, and I was like, oh, what's that about? But it talks about like eating pure foods and breathing fresh air and taking care of your mind and your body. And I've really been trying to do that lately. As a mother, sometimes you forget that you have to take care of yourself, and you feel selfish for doing that. So, I can blame a lot of things on why I am not as healthy as I'd like to be, but this just hit me kind of right now, that, it's something I'm working on, so.
Well, thank you. Anyone else? Sparks something in you?
I was handed courtesy, and I like to think I'm courteous, but there's some challenges here. I show others that I value and respect them. I treat others graciously. I make requests, not demands. I listen attentively, and I treat my intimates with special care. And that was nice. And there's a quote up the top from a fellow called George Meredith. See ye not, courtesy is the true alchemy, turning to gold all that it touches and tries.
Wow. All right. Yeah, that's right. And I think we all could use some more courtesy, right? Yeah.
Let's try compassion.
Nice.
Compassion is a deep empathy for another who is suffering or living with misfortune. It is understanding and caring and a strong desire to ease their distress. Compassion flows freely from our hearts when we let go of judgments and seek to understand. Our compassionate presence helps people to know they are not alone. Sometimes they don't need us to fix anything. They only need to be heard with compassion so that they can connect to their own inner wisdom. We need our own compassion as much as others do. Whether a silent prayer or a gentle touch, compassion is a priceless gift.
Wow, thank you. That's a good word right there. Anyone else receive one that want to amplify?
So we know it was not, it was random because I got the last one. So I have zeal. And actually, I don't know what it says because in the zeal of printing it out, maybe it got really dark. But I can read zeal. Fortunately, on the backside, there is a nice quote by Charles Buxton. Experience shows that success is due less to ability than to zeal. The winner is he who gives himself to his work, body, and soul. And the practice of zeal is I have a deep sense of purpose. I am passionate about what I value. I give all I have. I persevere in my enthusiasm. I am considerate of the perspective of others. I work with joyous energy. And what struck me was do less to ability than to zeal. And that leads to success, and I love the ability that you guys are accepting of, I love the way you guys are accepting of people's zeal. Thank you.
Other things that this brings up. And now, last time, after last week, somebody said, I was thinking about this, and like any one of these could, am I overthinking this? This person, I think, said, because it seems like any one of these could actually turn into a vice. Any virtue, like if you, do you see how that's possible? Yes.
I was thinking that a little bit with the wording on mine, because it starts with faithfulness as being loyal to our beliefs, remaining firm and steadfast regardless of what happens. And I don't know, I was kind of feeling like beliefs maybe wasn't the right thing to put there, because being too loyal to your beliefs and being like unable to change, I feel like would be a bad thing. And especially like the last decade of my life, like my beliefs have changed. Like 10 years ago, me looking at 10 years in the future, attending a affirming church would not be a good thing. Like in my beliefs 10 years ago, right? So I feel like changing your beliefs is good, but being loyal to my like soul virtues is why I've changed my beliefs. So I think faithfulness in that regard is good. But then it goes on about being faithful to those around you and how people can trust you, and I think that is maybe, I mean, you can be loyal to a fault, but I think is a pretty good thing. The line here says, when our faith is tested, we stay strong and learn from the experience, and that I think is really strong. But also it challenges me because a lot of the beliefs that I hold now, like sometimes I'm too afraid to stand up for them.
Okay.
So kind of a mix on mine.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad. I'm so glad for, like, let's approach this in a real way, and this can be, and we can push back too. I mean, and there are ways that that one virtue in isolation could become a vice, right? And that's also why I wanted to make sure to have all of the virtues listed for you, because maybe one balances out the other, right? Maybe a kind of zealous attachment to one's beliefs is then balanced or challenged by compassion, right? Or by open-mindedness or charity, so to say. So, or curiosity. Thanks for lifting that up, Shannon. Is curiosity on the list? No. Is it? Yeah, nice. So, are there virtues that you would like to have on the list that you don't see? That's another question. Anything else that's bubbling up for you? Yes.
Mine is justice. And what comes to mind immediately for me, I think, is the idea of Lady Justice and the scales of justice, institutional justice, the law, and then social justice too, which maybe 10 years ago I didn't even know that word existed or that phrase existed. But anyway, in this, it's talking more about, partially about personal integrity, the practice of justice. I think for myself, do not engage in prejudice or backbiting. I make fair agreements. I make restitution for my mistakes. I honor people's rights, including my own. I have the courage to stand up for truth. And it has a quote from the Holocaust Museum. Thou shalt not be a victim. Thou shalt not be a perpetrator. Above all, thou shalt not be a bystander.
Wow.
That was powerful.
Thank you. That's powerful, right. And the other thing to name here, too, is that, oh yes, Catherine, is that some of these are, really feel like personal virtues, individual virtues, but it's important that we don't exist in isolation and we live in societies, and so collective virtues, I think, are also very important to.
Yes. When I first saw mine today, I thought, oh boy, this is going to involve me needing to do a lot of work because it's reverence. And those who know me well know that I tend to be pretty irreverent a lot of the time about a lot of things. So I thought, oh boy, I don't know about this. But looking at the backside, it talks about the practice of reverence and includes things that I thought to myself, okay, actually, I'm in with that. I'm down with that. It's things like, I open my soul to life's wonders. I discern the meaning of my experiences. I allow beauty to nurture my soul. And I respect the value of all life. And I'm down with all of those.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot.
Mine is optimism. Optimism is a positive, cheerful outlook. When we are optimistic, we are helpful, even when others have lost faith. We believe that good has the power to prevail over evil. We do not allow ourselves to be victimized by setbacks or losses. We embrace challenges with confidence and vitality. We are solvers, not complainers. In the midst of dark times, we look to the future with a vision of what is possible. We trust that everything works together for good. Nothing can destroy our hope. And on the back, the practice of optimism, I have a positive viewpoint. I have faith in all circumstances. I trust in positive outlooks. Our focus on solutions rather than problems. I see a brighter future. My hope is resilient. And the quote is from Khalil Gibran. The optimist sees the rose and not the thorns. The pessimist stares at the thorns, oblivious of the rose.
Just don't grab the thorns. If you don't see the thorns, you may grab them. There you go.
I had optimism as well.
Oh, yeah.
And so we have duplicates, just so you know.
Yes, sure. Yeah.
And at first I rolled my eyes
Yeah,
out
me
of
too.
virtue. So, and I think that what the reason is because sometimes there's too much when at a moment somebody needs to just be, not an and we talk about that a lot in the grief group, right? Just that it's not always trying to fix or to put a positive spin on everything. It's sitting in the feeling and then, yes, looking forward. I like the focus on solutions rather than problems, but sometimes, in my opinion, when we look at like what compassion to what Rob read, is that to have compassion sometimes is not to always put, this positivity on something. Not to be a pessimist, but that's how I felt.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Good. So I really appreciate how you all are engaging with this, because I hope for these virtues to be able to stir us and to provoke provoke challenges, to provoke invitations, to provoke engagement with the deep things that they bring up, right? So thank you for sharing, and we can keep the conversation going. And I will end. Yeah, and these are virtues that are really important for us to engage with and to seek to be inspired by and challenged by and to represent in public and to be held accountable to and hold others accountable to. And so I'll just end with a prayer or a blessing before our choir will help us to settle more deeply into this time. This is a prayer for courage. Courage comes from the heart, and we are always welcomed by God, the heart of all being. We bear witness to our faith, knowing that we are called to live lives of courage, love, and reconciliation in the ordinary and extraordinary moments of each day. We bear witness, too, to our failures and our complicity in the fractures of our world. May we be courageous today. May we learn today. May we love today.